Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I am going to be going through all of my pickups for the month of November 2021. So coming into this video, I didn't think I would have that much to show you, but as it turns out, I did actually pick up quite a lot. Most of it is DVDs from charity shops and CEX, places like that. But there are a few Blu-rays that I picked up, and there's also one 4K as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first film that I picked up was Awakenings, starring Robert De Niro and Robin Williams. So Robin Williams plays a doctor in the 1960s who works at a hospital, and Robert De Niro plays a patient there who was stricken with this terrible disease when he was younger, and it's kind of plagued him for most of his life. And Robin Williams, him and Robin Williams meet, and Robin Williams is able to help him through it. And yeah, it's a really, really good film, really touching in places, just a nice sort of simple drama. If that's all you're looking for, then it's definitely worth checking out. So the next few DVDs that I picked up were from the director, Brian De Palma. Brian De Palma is one of my all-time favourite directors, but there were a few films from his filmography that I didn't actually own, and there's even some that I hadn't seen before. So the first one that I picked up was The Black Dahlia. So this is sort of based on the true story of the Black Dahlia murder in 1940s Hollywood. But it's obviously got a bit of a fictional spin on it as well. And overall, it was okay. The performances were good. It was shot very well. Cinematography is really, really good. But the story is definitely lacking. It's very, very patchy in places. It's a bit muddled. The final twist is a bit underwhelming, but overall it's not too bad. So the next Brian De Palma film that I picked up was The Bonfire at the Vanities. So yeah, this is quite a notorious film in the Hollywood circuit. Came out in 1990 and absolutely bombed critically and commercially. It was criticised, I think, for the really bad miscasting of the characters. I haven't actually read the book that it's based on, but I can tell that some of the actors in it were cast more for their popularity than for actually being right for the roles. Overall, I didn't think the film was too bad. It's certainly not great, but again, it's really well made. The production values are excellent. But yeah, the story is definitely lacking, and yeah, I do feel like maybe they should have cast different actors in this film, but overall it was okay. So the next Brian De Palma one that I picked up was Snake Eyes, starring Nicolas Cage and Gary Sinise. So this is a film that I know it has quite a bit of a cult following amongst Brian De Palma fans. Some people say it's one of his better, more recent films. Personally, I wasn't that big on it. Again, really well made, really well shot, but the story just didn't do anything for me. I found myself being quite bored throughout a lot of this film, even though it wasn't a very long film. But, again, it was okay. And then the last Brian De Palma one that I picked up was Mission to Mars. So this is one I had actually already seen. The first time I saw it, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. And I remember going into it expecting like an Armageddon, Independence Day type film. And my 10-year-old self was so disappointed in this film at the time. It's not heavy on action or science fiction. It's more of a thought-provoking film, sort of like, 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I have to admit, rewatching it again for the first time in probably almost 20 years, I actually really enjoyed this film. I just think, it's, again, really well made. It's got a great score by Ennio Morricone. And yeah, I like the sort of the more thought-provoking, slower-paced sort of film like this, where it deals with like space travel. Obviously, 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my all-time favourite films. I think if you like films like that, then you will definitely enjoy Mission to Mars. So the next DVD that I picked up was The Colour Purple, directed by Steven Spielberg. So this is a film I still haven't actually seen, and I'm looking forward to watching it. I think it's meant to be one of his first sort of serious films, deals with quite some difficult things. I think it's meant to be quite a hard watch in places, but I'm looking forward to it. Next DVD that I picked up was Keeping Mum. So this is a British comedy from 2005 starring Rowan Atkinson, Kristen Scott Thomas, Maggie Smith and Patrick Swayze. I remember really enjoying this film the first time I saw it. On rewatch, it wasn't quite as good as I remembered, but if you like your British comedies, certainly like the more modern comedies, like something like Death at a Funeral, then I think you'll enjoy Keeping Mum. So the next DVD that I picked up is one of the few M. Night Shyamalan films that I hadn't seen, and that is Lady in the Water. So yeah, I remember this film coming out and I remember seeing the trailer and I just remember thinking like, that looks so boring. I just had no interest in watching it at all. And I watched it this month and I have to admit, I hated this film. I was watching this film and I was just like, what is this film about? Supposedly it's meant to be based on a fairy tale that M. Night Shyamalan made up to tell his kids as a bedtime story. And then he decided to make it into a film. And there's just really nothing about this film that's great. The only thing I liked was the score by, oh god, I've forgotten his name. James Newton Howard, I think it was. The score in the film is brilliant, but everything else was just awful. So the next two DVDs that I picked up were from Ridley Scott. So these are two of his films that I hadn't actually seen. First one is G.I. Jane. So this is basically about a woman who becomes one of the first female Navy SEALs. And it basically follows her journey as she goes through all the training to become a Navy SEAL. And overall, it was okay. Watchable. Again, really well made. But the story didn't do anything for me. It was basically just 2 hours of soldiers doing training exercises. That was literally it. But overall, it was okay. So the other Ridley Scott film that I picked up was Matchstick Men, starring Nicolas Cage and Sam Rockwell, who basically play con men. I thought this film was excellent. Nicolas Cage's character, so he is a con man, but he also suffers quite badly from OCD and Tourette syndrome. And it basically follows him as, he starts off as this shady character, but then as it goes on, things start to happen in his life that kind of turns his outlook on life around. I would say that his performance in it is one of the best I have ever seen. I'm not the biggest Nicolas Cage fan, but yeah, his performance was excellent in it. And I thought this was a really good film and definitely one of Ridley Scott's more underrated films. So the next film that I picked up is a Coen Brothers film, and it is The Lady Killers. I wasn't too big on this film. I know amongst Coen Brothers fans, it kind of, a lot of people consider it to be one of their weakest films. And I would agree with that. I didn't find it particularly funny or interesting. The main performance from Tom Hanks is good. He looks like he's having a blast in this film. But apart from that, I found it pretty forgettable. Next DVD that I picked up is a bit of a strange one, but it is Passenger 57, starring Wesley Snipes. This is your standard action movie sort of fare, really. Everything about it screams 90s action films. Is it one of the best I've seen? Not really, but it was enjoyable for what it was. I had an alright time with it. Okay, so the next DVD that I picked up is one that I haven't actually seen, and it is Presumed Innocent, starring Harrison Ford. It comes in one of these sort of classic sort of, snapper cases. I'm a big Harrison Ford fan, and it's one of the few films from his that I haven't actually seen. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. I think it's meant to be sort of like a courtroom drama, but I think he sort of plays a lawyer in it that is accused of something. I'm not too sure what, but we'll find out, and hopefully I enjoy it. Next DVD that I picked up is a film called Sleepers. I picked this up mainly for the cast. I mean, what a brilliant cast. You've got Kevin Bacon, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Jason Patric, and Brad Pitt. And overall, it was a pretty good film. Another sort of courtroom drama about a group of guys who, when they were young kids, they were sent to this facility for like troubled youngsters, and they were subject to some abuse there. And then the film kind of shows them later in life, basically seeking justice for what happened to them at that facility. And yeah, overall, it's a pretty good film. Next DVD that I picked up is another that I haven't actually watched yet, and it is Soldier of Orange, starring Rutger Hauer, directed by Paul Verhoeven, who is obviously best known for doing films like RoboCop, Total Recall, films like that. Yeah, I know that my good friend Andy at Forgotten World of Movies is a big fan of this movie. And yeah, I was just lucky to track it down at a CEX for a fairly good price. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. Hopefully it'll be good. Next DVD that I picked up is Uncle Buck. This is a John Hughes directed film starring John Candy. Overall, it's pretty funny. Not one of my favourite John Candy films, but I had a pretty good time with it. Next film that I picked up is a film that I have seen before, and it is Weekend at Bernie's. This film is pretty daft, pretty silly. It's basically about a couple of young guys, and they go to the vacation house of their boss, who's called Bernie. And when they get there, they find that Bernie has died. He's passed away. And for some reason, these two young guys basically decide to go along with this whole act that Bernie isn't actually dead and that, he's actually alive and well. And, they have lots of visitors come to the house and lots of, silly moments where, they've got Bernie and, they're just holding him up, pretending that he's alive, and everyone's buying into it. Yeah, it's a really silly concept, really daft. But there are some moments in it that I find pretty hilarious, I will admit. Definitely a guilty pleasure. Next DVD that I picked up is What Lies Beneath. Robert Zemeckis' film, actually a film that I've always really enjoyed, and I couldn't believe that I didn't actually own it on DVD. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. It's really creepy in places, got sort of a great Hitchcockian vibe to it. And yeah, overall, it's just a lot of fun. And like I said, it is kind of creepy in places. Okay, so the last DVD that I picked up is a film called What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So this stars Johnny Depp, and I think one of the first performances from Leonardo DiCaprio. And it's basically just about this guy called Gilbert Grape, who lives in this small town in America, and it basically just follows his life. He leads kind of a troubled life. He's got a younger brother played by Leonardo DiCaprio who is kind of, he's got some mental issues. He's got a mother who is severely overweight and has a lot of health problems. And then it just kind of follows him as he, meets new people, gets into trouble, all that kind of stuff. Overall, it's a really, really solid film, really enjoyable sort of drama. And yeah, I'd recommend it. Okay, so now we're on to the Blu-rays. So obviously earlier this year, we had the release of Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright. That was a film I really enjoyed, and it was only afterwards I realised that I didn't actually own any of his other films on Blu-ray, so I decided to pick some up. And the first one I got was Baby Driver. Overall, it's not one of my favourite Edgar Wright films. It's pretty slick, pretty entertaining. I think the story's okay, but, it's a fairly good time. Okay, and the next thing I got was the Free Flavors Cornetto trilogy. Obviously has Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. I had already seen the first two films in this set before. Shaun of the Dead's pretty good, but Hot Fuzz is probably my favourite of the three. I remember seeing that in the cinema and having a blast with it. The World's End, I wasn't that big on, I have to admit. I thought tonally it was very drab and kind of lacking the energy of the first two. And I found the whole body snatchers kind of plot a bit weird, a bit silly. Yeah, I found it a bit of a disappointment compared to the other two, but overall the trilogy is pretty good. Next Blu-ray I picked up is another Steven Spielberg film, and it is The Bridge of Spies, starring Tom Hanks. Yeah, this is sort of your standard fare from Spielberg. If you're familiar with his dramas in his later career, then I think you'll probably know what to expect from this film. I wasn't blown away by it, but I thought it was pretty solid at the end of the day. So the next DVD that I picked up was The Father, starring Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman. Now, there aren't that many films that will get me close to tears or reduce me to tears, but this film, I saw it earlier in the year, and I was so close to weeping at the end of it. Just what a sad film. What a really, really sad film. Basically about a guy who's got dementia, and Olivia Colman plays his daughter, and the film's basically about them living with it. You know, Anthony Hopkins living with it and Olivia Colman living with it. But it's not just a simple drama about a guy who has dementia. The director very cleverly puts you into this guy's shoes, and when you watch this film, it is very confusing and very disorientating. Things happen in the film that seem okay, and then something completely different will happen and it will throw you off. And I think it was the director's intention to show you what it feels like to live with this awful condition. This was one of my favourite films of the last year. I thought it was just perfect in every way. Okay, next Blu-ray that I picked up is John Wick 3. Yeah, I love the John Wick films. I wasn't actually that blown away by the third one. It's probably my least favourite of the three, but I just kind of got it to complete the collection. It was pretty cheap in HMV. It was on like an offer, so I picked it up. Overall, it's still a lot of fun. I just don't think it's as good as the first two. Next Blu-ray that I picked up was from CEX, and this is a major guilty pleasure for me, but it is Moulin Rouge. Yeah, so this is a musical set in the year 1900 at the Moulin Rouge in Paris, and I don't know, I love this film. It's just so crazy. The music is great in it, the performances are great, it's got an amazing energy, like, oof, God, I mean, sensory overload. Just all sorts of great stuff in this film. Comedy, drama, romance, music, you name it, it's got it. And, you know, I'm not even ashamed to admit that I love this film. I have a blast with it every time I watch it. Next Blu-ray that I picked up is an anime film, and it's a film called Weathering with You. So this is by the director of a film called Your Name, which was released for 4 or 5 years ago, and it's one of my favourite films from that decade. It was just an amazing film. Just everything about it was just beautiful. The story, the animation, the music, the drama, the comedy, everything was great. So when I found out about this film, I had to pick it up. And like Your Name, I thought it was really, really good. Just a really sweet film. Again, the animation is beautiful. Good sort of story. It's kind of out there, the story, but if you can handle that kind of stuff, then I think you'll like it. Yeah, it's just a really, really sweet film, and that's all I can really say about it. Okay, the next few Blu-rays that I've got now are sort of more boutique. The first one I got is a Criterion release, and it is the Darjeeling Limited, Wes Anderson. Yeah, I really enjoy this film. I know that it's kind of considered to be Wes Anderson's, or one of his weaker films, but overall I think it's a lot of fun. You know, it's got a good cast, it's got a decent story. He's definitely got better films, but overall, I think it's pretty good, and, you know, it's classic Wes Anderson. I also got another Criterion release, and this is a film called Mirror by Andrei Tarkovsky. Yeah, this is quite a film. I'm a big fan of Tarkovsky's work. I really enjoyed Stalker, I really enjoyed Solaris. Ivan's Childhood was okay. But this film, Mirror, is kind of hard to put into words. It doesn't really have a story. It's kind of meant to be based on Tarkovsky's sort of dreams and memories he has, and it's just kind of all thrown together in a sort of very incoherent structure. If you like Tarkovsky, I think you'll like this film. I think for me personally, there were a lot of moments in it that I did enjoy, but I think the lack of a narrative and a lack of a structure kind of made it a bit difficult for me. But overall, I thought it was pretty good, and it's worth checking out. Next film I've got here is a Eureka release, and it's a film called Harikiri. This is by a director called Masaki Kobayashi, and he directed a film called The Human Condition, which is an amazing film, definitely worth checking out. But this is probably my favourite from him. I think it's one of the best samurai movies I've ever seen. It's got a really haunting tone, gripping story and great performances. If you like sort of your Japanese cinema, this is a must-see. So the next one I've got here is an Arrow release. This is a trilogy of films, and it is the new Battle Without Honors and Humanity set. So yeah, I was a huge fan of the original Battle Without Honors and Humanity films, directed by Kinji Fukasaku, who's probably best known for doing Battle Royale. But these are sort of his early Yakuza films from the 1970s. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking these 3 out because I was a huge fan of the first 5 films that he released. Okay, another Arrow release here, and it is a film called Dream Demon. I'd seen some people talk about this film on some other YouTube channels, and I saw it in HMV during a sale, and I thought I'd give it a go. And you know what? I actually really enjoyed this film. Kind of like a forgotten sort of gem. Kind of like got Nightmare on Elm Street vibes, but in a much more subtle, more serious way. And yeah, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's just got a really great sort of tone to it, very atmospheric. It's got a really good musical score. I don't remember who the composer is, but I remember being quite struck with the music. And just overall, it was just really enjoyable. Some good sort of effects in it as well. Yeah, can't really say much more than that. It's definitely a film that's worth checking out. And the last title I got is a 4K release, and this is a release for one of my all-time favourite films. Again, another Brian De Palma film, and it is Carlitos Way. Yeah, I absolutely adore this film. One of my all-time favourites, starring Al Pacino and Sean Penn. Al Pacino is basically a former gangster who's been released from prison, and he basically wants a new life, doesn't want to go back to a life of crime. But then, as you probably expect, things start to happen that kind of draws him back in. But, he's really desperate to just get away from that life. But it's kind of like that life, will always be with him. And yeah, it's just an amazing film. Probably the best Brian De Palma film of his filmography. Yeah, it's just a great story. And there's a really fantastic sequence at the end of the film. It goes on for about 20 minutes, and it's essentially a chase sequence, but one of the most tense, suspenseful chase sequences I've ever seen in a film. And yeah, I can't recommend this film enough. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. So that's it, guys. Those are my pickups for the month of November 2021. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any comments at all, then please leave them below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will hopefully see you all again very soon. So thanks.